Hey everyone, welcome back. Hope you guys are having a great Thursday today. So obviously Bitcoin was down a little bit today. It was down like 1.5%. Not a bad day after all. Miners were down a little bit. We had some miners that were actually in the green. IREN did really well today. We'll talk about that obviously a little bit. And then we'll take a look at Bitdeer, their financial update. And then we'll get into the miners that are being shorted here in the last basically month. We'll look at some data there. And we'll get into the Q&A side of things. So it should be pretty easy here. And as always, you guys know the drill. Not financial advice for entertainment only. This is my full disclosure for you guys, what I own. I'm not paid by anybody. So if you enjoy this type of content, hit the like button, subscribe, helps me out tremendously. And let's get into the charts here on Bitcoin, and the network hash rate, the hash price, all that stuff. And we'll get into the stories. So obviously here's the total network hash rate right now on the 7-day average. It is climbing back up. Obviously Bitcoin's going up in price, so that kind of, we expect to see that, right? When the price of Bitcoin goes up, network hash rate is going to go up as well, and we're seeing that on the 7-day average. If we look at the 30-day average, it's still continuing to go down a little bit here as well. Obviously, we've had some days that we've been down, so it's down to 606 exahash right now from the peak that we were at approximately 625 exahash. So we're down a nice sized amount, but not as much as we were thinking it's going to come down. Obviously, Bitcoin price being up much higher, that obviously has an effect on it, okay? Going down here to the Bitcoin transaction fees per day, that is still down, and for whatever reason that is not working for me still. I don't know why. I think the website might be having issues there, but we're still kind of like in the 20 BTC per day range right now on it. Okay, so that's still low. And then we're looking at the hash price here. Bitcoin hash price has come up, obviously with Bitcoin price going up. Obviously today Bitcoin price went down, so the hash price went down as well. We're at 51 to 51.89 right now as it was. The high was 52.79, so it's still obviously low compared to where we were just a couple weeks ago before the halving event. So that's going to continue on going forward here until Bitcoin price goes up to 100,000 and beyond. But here's Bitcoin obviously today. Bitcoin was down 1.5% roughly on the day. It wasn't down too bad. It closed at 65,252. And we are still kind of above the 50-day moving average line here, which is right there. You can see it. We're slightly above it. So we'll see if it battles that and if we can possibly continue to go up further from here. Right, that would be really great here. Now, as far as the miners are concerned, the miners were obviously down today for the most part. We had Bitdeer that was up 3.53%. Hut was up just 1.02%. IREN was up 12.12%. I think the reason IREN was up quite nicely today was mainly because of the stuff that came out yesterday with them growing their hash rate to 30 exahash by the end of this year, 40 exahash by sometime in the first half of 2025, right? So growth is obviously what investors are looking for in the miners. Anytime we see a miner report great growth going forward, or expansion forward, we see the stock price do pretty well. They also came out with an ATM. So for 500 million, we were thinking that maybe because of the ATM, the stock would possibly go down a little bit. And I did say I was going to buy some if it did come down. It didn't come down, so I didn't get a chance to buy. I'm waiting for a little pullback, and at that point, I'll probably buy the stock at that point. Okay, so obviously, great stuff for IREN here. And like I said, I think it's just basically being driven by hash rate growth going forward, which obviously is what investors are looking for. I'm looking for that as well, and I do own some shares in IREN. I don't own enough of them though, so I want to buy some more here going forward, and hopefully the price doesn't run away from me too fast. Okay, so that's it for the miners here side of things. Let's take a look at the financial results for Bitdeer here. So Bitdeer reports obviously unaudited financial results for the first quarter of 2024, an operational update. We're just going to kind of concentrate more on the financial results here, just kind of quick overview here. So total revenue was up to 119.5 million compared to 72.6 million for the same period last year. Net income was 0.6 million. Compared to net loss of 9.5 million, so that's good there. Adjusted profit was 8.4 million compared to 2.8 million in Q1, right? So that's good of last year. And then adjusted beta was 26 million compared to 18.5 million, so that's also good, right? We're seeing some improvements there. Cash and cash equivalents were 118 million as of March 31st. So all good things there, right? We're seeing that with Bitcoin price going up in value. That's obviously helping a lot of these miners out in Q1. Q2 is going to be obviously a different story because having event happen, everything else. So we'll obviously have to have a reduction in all these things going forward. But it all obviously depends where Bitcoin ends up at the end of this quarter, right? Which is going to end in June. But so that's Bitdeer there. Let's take a look at the numbers that I do have here for them. We'll discuss it really quick here. Bitdeer has about 117 million shares outstanding right now. Their market cap is at 685 million. We can see that they're at 6.7 exahash. They're supposed to get to about 11 exahash, roughly. They're getting more miners in, but they're saying that they're going to replace some of the older miners as well as part of that. So we'll see actually where they end up at on that. So they do have some growth left here. Looking at the quarterly results here, we can see that Revenue increased just slightly over Q4 here. They're up to 119, obviously in Q1, 114, so about 5 million roughly. Not even that 4 point something million in increase on that. And then looking at the current estimated quarter that we're in, we're looking at about 68.25 million, which is obviously a pretty big drop for them. Excuse me. That obviously is going to be a little bit painful for them. I think they're probably going to be negative EPS on that at that point, unless they can really turn things around on some things. But we'll take a look at that. Last 4 quarter operating cost minus depreciation was at 85, so that's down from 87. So that's actually a good sign there. Cost to mine 1 Bitcoin has actually gone up quite a bit here, 37.99. And I think it's mainly because they use some of the older machines, right? So that's why they're having to update their current fleet to the latest generation miners, which they are going to be producing themselves, making, right, the seal miners. And we're still waiting on some details on those as well. We don't have a lot of details on like the terahash, the joules per terahash, and possibly cost as well on those. We're hoping to get those possibly in maybe this quarter or next quarter at the latest. Information once they actually start doing production on it. Okay, Bitcoin mine quarterly here, down quite a bit here, down to 911 from 1,299. And then we got debt to equity. Obviously, that's been coming down lower, so that's good. Current ratio has actually been up a little bit here, but it's still really good. 5.9 times that they can pay the current liabilities over. So that's good there. Total current assets increased to 419 million, so that's good. Total current liabilities is only 70 million, so that's good, right? Good ratio there. Going down here, we'll get into some of these specifics in a second here. Looking at their current assets, like we said, 419 from 385, so that's good. Total assets increased to 690 from 639, so that's good. Then we look at total current liabilities. That's up to 70 million from 68 million. Not a great increase, small increase there, so that's not bad there. Net assets or net liabilities, so this should be probably net liabilities. That came in at 391 from 332, so that's up a little bit here, but obviously they're trying to build out their own machines and things like that. It's going to be costly, obviously, up front. And then total liabilities and stakeholder equity is at 690 compared to 639, so we did have a little bit of an increase there, which is good. Now, getting into the revenue side of things, we can see here that self-mining came in at 48 million, right, compared to 46 million that they had in the prior quarter. So that is a slight improvement there, not much, but obviously not much hash rate growth in that quarter either. Cloud hash rate actually went down here, the revenue, to 18.1 from 19.5. And then we have also down here the general hosting. That's up to 28.9 from 25, so that's actually good there. It's a slight increase. Membership hosting is down also to 19.4 from 23.4. And then other is actually up quite a bit here to 4.473. That's what I could just figure out from that. Their numbers aren't the greatest, or at least they're not consistent with reporting the same format when they do the 10 Qs, which I don't even think this was a 10 Q. I think they just put it out there as a release. So it's a little bit hard to figure out some of this information on here. Going down here, we can see here, let's see here, cost of revenue, 85 million, so that's down from 87. And then selling expenses actually went down to 1.6 from 2 million, so that's good. General administrative also went down to roughly 15 million from 17 million, so that's good. Research and development, which obviously includes their research into ASIC chips and building their own ASIC miner. Excuse me, that increased quite tremendously here to 21, so almost a 3x increase on that. And then we have, what else do we have here that kind of increased? Other operating income expenses down to 1.7 from 3, so that's fine. And then other net gain was 2.4 from 1, so that's a good increase there as well. So profit loss from operations was 501,000, comparing that to the prior quarter, which was 3.7 million at that point. Okay, going all the way down here, we can see that their total comprehensive income was 638,000. They give them basically a penny per share of EPS on it. All right, and then I'm still trying to figure out all this data down here below, which I'm hoping that they will report an actual 10Q figures, which will have all this information in there right now. I just don't have it in there. So based on all of that, if we look up here, we can see that their cost to mine, like I said, was 37,993, and that is based on looking at this number here, which was self-mining cost as a percentage of cost of revenue, right? Because they didn't split that out separately. So I came up with 34.6 million on that. So that's kind of why we're getting the pretty high cost there. They also mined less, right? Quite a bit less in the quarter. And you can see here really no hash rate growth there. They were at 6.7 exahash as well. Looking at the debt to equity, we covered that. Current ratio, we already covered that as well. Book to value is 391 million. Price to book ratio 1.753. Enterprise value 685. And then the revenues for the whole thing was 119 million. General administrative part of it was 14.96. So that's only 12.53%. So that's actually pretty good. That's actually come down from the fourth quarter, and it has been coming down here ever since, since we've kind of been tracking them for the last year or so. So that's a good sign there, right? We want to see those numbers come down, and those usually it helps when they reach scale. If you reach scale, things do look a lot better for them going forward. Not only for them, but for other companies as well. Okay, so that's kind of the way things stacked up there. They're currently at $5.86. I think they should be probably like around $11.56 to $17.34 based on all the different business segments that they have. They obviously need to improve on their fleet because their fleet is pretty old. So they have a lot of these on average, like 93.4 terahash miners. And this is from when they came public. When they came public, they reported the amount of miners that they had and the hash rate that they had at that point. And that's how I was able to figure that out. I estimated on the watts for those machines. Don't really know on that side of things, so that's best guess estimate on there. And then did include some purchases here recently, and the seal miners obviously are coming in next as well, right? So those are going to be a little bit more efficient and possibly better going forward. But like I said, these older miners are obviously the reason why their costs are up higher because of network hash rate increasing. That's obviously generating less revenue for them, and just the cost to operate with network hash rate increasing is going to be obviously more. So that's kind of where we're at here. So big thing for them is obviously be able to get the ASICs out that they're producing, they're making, grow their own hash rate as well. They do have a lot of plans going forward. They're building out in Ohio, in Dayton, Ohio, I think they're building out over there. They're also building out in Bhutan. I think I'm probably butchering that name there. But they have a huge facility they're building out there along with the one in Ohio. So they have a lot of growth going forward. It just won't probably happen until 2025 sometime. And like I said, we might be, by the time they get to where they want to get to, we might be already past the bull run, potentially. Don't know. Or we might be right at the very peak of it at that point. So the more growth that we can have here in 2024, I think the better it is. And obviously the stock is kind of reflecting that we don't have a lot of growth here on them. They also don't hodl anything, so that's the reason for it there. Okay, so that's it basically for Bitdeer as far as breakdown in their financial results. Okay. Next, let's get into the shorted interest here on the miners that I just pulled in the data today. So this is going to look over the last month's data that we kind of covered last month. So this is comparison to that pretty much, how much did that increase and so forth, so on. And what we're doing here is we're looking at shares out currently by the miners that have reported already, market cap. This was a previous number of shares shorted. This is the current number of shares shorted. This is the percentage of float, shares shorted percentage, value of that as well. Difference from last time, float from Yahoo. So I'm getting the sources from a couple sources because it seems like it's almost impossible to get an accurate source from one place. So I'm using float from Yahoo, float from Finvins, and float from WSJI, Wall Street Journal as well. And I'm taking the average float of all those three. Okay, so we're using the average on it because they all seem to differ from one to the other for whatever reason. And if only we had something like a blockchain that could store all this data properly. If they could actually use that, I think that would be great. But here's what we come up with here. So current number of shares shorted. You can see here that Marathon has the most number of shares shorted, 59 million, followed by Riot at 45 million. Then you got Cleanspark with 34 million and TeraWolf at 26 million, followed by Bitfarms at 23, and then so on down the list here. The one that has the least amount is Bitdeer, actually. 1.7 million here only shorted, right? Now, when we look at the percentage of average float shorted, we can see that Marathon is obviously still the number one here. They're the most shorted here. 25% of their float is shorted, followed by BitDigital at 24%. Then you got Riot at 22%, Cleanspark at 18%, Core at 17%, TeraWolf at 16%, Cypher at 10%, Bitfarms at only 8%, Iris along as well at 8%, Hot 8 at 7%, Bitdeer at 6%, and Hive at 4.65%. So Hive is the least shorted here right now. Okay. Then when we look at the share shorted value versus market cap, you can see Marathon obviously quite a bit there, 25%. Their market cap is basically shorted. Cleanspark here comes in at number 2 now at 687 million. Riot at 614, Cypher 132, and the list goes down the list as you can see here. And this is arranged by market cap from the highest to the lowest as well. Okay, and then when we look at the number of shares shorted change from last time, so basically going back 4 weeks, what was that number there and how much has that changed since then? We can see here that Marathon has the most increased in shares shorted, 16.3 million, followed by Riot, 14.2. Then you got Cleanspark at 7.8, Bitdigital at 4, and then Iris at 2.7 million, and everybody else down below. And it looks like TeraWolf actually had a decrease of about 12.9, along with Bitfarms about 3.4 million shares, Hut 8 down almost 3 million basically, and so on. So these are the guys that are getting shorted the most here recently, and that kind of coincides with what we're seeing as far as percentage of shares shorted as well. Okay, and then the price change percentage from 4 weeks ago, just to kind of take a look at that. You can see that Core is up the most, 17% from 4 weeks ago, along with Bitdigital, Marathon, and then everybody else here is pretty much in the red, with the exception of Riot being up 1%, right, from 4 weeks ago, from when we last checked this. And then here's the actual breakdown on all of these guys here. You can see how that has transpired, the shares being shorted over time. And you can see obviously Bitdeer, pretty low numbers here for them all across the board, going back to basically June of last year. You got Bitdigital. A lot of these guys like a roller coaster ride. They kind of go up and down in time. Some of them follow suit, but Bitfarms obviously was heavily shorted here in the beginning of the year, a little bit less so, and then kind of getting an increase here again. Going forward, obviously with a lot of FUD for Bitfarms with the CEO and then Paraguay, all that other FUD that we're having, so that's kind of expected to have a little bit more short interest on them going into it here recently. Cypher, kind of, it's been going up a little bit here. Most shorted here was back in 315, and they're back down to 14 million here recently. Yeah, Cleanspark obviously going up and up and up, continuing. Obviously, Cleanspark has done the best as far as performance-wise in the last 52 weeks. No wonder that they're being shorted as well, right? And you got Core. Obviously, Core we just started tracking here as they got out of their Chapter 11 bankruptcy. That's been rising steadily as well for them on the short interest of things. Hive, pretty low for the most part. You can see here that in the end of the last year, they got kind of high here at 8.97 million shares, but that's been kind of coming down here as well. And you got Hut 8. This was before the merger. This is after their merger down here. And you can see it's pretty steady, right around 9 million or so. So not a lot of short. Surprisingly, I thought that people would be shorting them even more. And then Iris here, kind of flat also, right around 1.2, 1.5 million or so. Not a lot of change back and forth. And you got Marathon. Marathon's all over the place here. Their worst month, it looks like it was basically November, middle of November here for being shorted. And then it's been coming down here kind of steadily and then up a little bit, but still continuing to go down. Then you got Riot. Same thing, kind of situation up and down. Followed by TeraWolf, where TeraWolf has been continuing to increase in the number of shares being shorted on them. And I think people were just shorting them because of the debt that they have. Not a lot of growth this year potentially. And that's kind of what we're seeing here on this side of things. Okay, so that is basically it. It's interesting always to take a look at that, see how that all stacks up. And like I said, I pull in a lot of data on these guys just to kind of keep track of where things are heading. It's nice to take a look at that, look at how much they diluted, which we'll probably look at maybe next week sometime once everybody reports their quarterly results. We'll look at how much they've diluted from a year ago, how much hash rate they grew. All that stuff will be coming up next week as well. So stay tuned to that. Subscribe if you want to be notified of that. Obviously, hit the notification bell as well. But as always, my little sales pitch here is Patreon members get access to all of these sheets, spreadsheets, everything, all this data, the graphs, everything. And that's only $8 a month. Description for that is, or the link is in the description for that down below. And then if you pay for the annual fee for it, you get 10% discount. There might be a couple spots open left in the $5 range or the $4 range tiers, and you get access to the Discord server through all those tiers as well. So that is it for me on my sales pitch. And yeah, let's get into the Q&A side of things and call it a day. Let's see where we end up with questions here today. Hopefully we don't have any issues like we did yesterday with it. Okay, so let's go to Q&A. And let me scroll over to my screen here and see what you guys have to talk about or questions you may have. Let's see here. Okay, first question. Will you sell your Bitfarms in favor of IREN? No, not right now. I don't see a reason why to sell Bitfarms, at least not right now. Yes, there's some fun around the CEO, things like that, but I think that's going to get all worked out. Plus, they have one of the best guys in the business as far as operation side of things. They got Ben Gagnon there. And as long as he's there, I'm not going to be selling anytime soon because I think they're going to do very well going forward. Same thing with IREN, right? IREN, I started getting into them November, December of last year. There's reasons for it, obviously. Why I didn't buy into them earlier on, and that was mainly because with their special purpose vehicles that they had that went, well, they gave those back. But I wanted to see how the company does going forward, and I saw good things enough to start buying into them as well. So I'm done buying Bitfarms right now because I just got to the position that I want. IREN is going to be my next one that I'm going to be averaging into more and more here going forward. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Trying to find any questions if you guys have any questions. Okay, we got a comment here that I think is kind of nice. IREN at 30 exahash puts them up there with the top tier miners. What market cap should they be realistic end of year? Okay, so it's a comment and a question. But yeah, that definitely puts them into like the 5 top miners, right? You got Marathon at 50 exahash by the end of the year. Then you got basically Cleanspark getting to 32 exahash. Riot, I think, is supposed to get to 31 exahash. And then IREN is supposed to get to 30 exahash. You have Bitfarms getting to 21 exahash. Those are kind of like the top 5 miners there as far as hash rate going into the end of this year potentially. Given where they are right now, with their market cap around 700 million or so, I would think that they should be at least like a 2.1 by that time. If they can get to 30 exahash, probably even more than that. I'm guessing maybe 4 or 5 billion, if not more. At that time, it just all depends on where Bitcoin goes. Bitcoin goes up to 120, 100,000. Let's see, but Bitcoin goes up to 100,000. At that point, I think they should be at least probably around 3 billion, closer to where they are with some of the other peers there at that point. Let's see. Let's see. Will you keep your largest Cleanspark position? Yeah, the plan is to continue that. I have, like I said before, I have like $3.56 or something like that average on Cleanspark, and I'm still up over 300% on that one. I'm going to hold on to that one until it gets to a price point where I think it should go to, right? So I'm holding that. I'm not selling that anytime soon. That was one of my probably best plays that I did here, going back to 2022 in January when I started buying those. Let's see. Can Bitfarms add 14 exahash by end of year? Yes, they stated they're still on target to get to 21 exahash by the end of the year. They're supposed to get to 12 exahash possibly by June, right? That's their kind of goal. And then I think if they can do that, then they can possibly definitely get to the 21 exahash by the end of the year as well. Let's see. Will you start tracking HPC AI revenue and potential growth there also for the miners? Yeah, I think I'm going to have to because on some of these miners like BitDigital, they're getting 50 million in revenue. It's like 67% profit margin in that as well. That's going to be added to it. But the only thing is, I don't know how much, that's the question here. I don't know how much that AI side of the business is actually contributing to their stock price and growth forward. I think with the miners, I know a lot of people have been in them because of the growth and the volatility in the stocks, right? Where you have a bear market, they're down tremendously, but when you have a bull run, they're up tremendously as well. And I don't know how much that is adding into their stock price. I mean, we're not seeing that much right now, right? With even BitDigital, if you look at their stock price, they're making money on the AI side of things. It's steady revenue, but you're seeing that their stock is not doing that well. It's not performing as well as they would hope, and possibly a lot of investors in there as well, right? So I'll probably do track it, but I just don't know how much it's going to impact the stock prices going forward. So we'll have to keep an eye on that one. Let's see. Next question. If you were IREN, which miners would you purchase? The pros are more efficient but more expensive per their terms. Yeah, they actually got a little bit higher price tag on those than Cleanspark. I think got like still 14.8 or something like that per terahash on those, or 16, something like that, and they're getting them for like $18, so they're paying more for them. But yeah, those are probably the ones I would go with right now. Those are the most efficient. You're at 15 joules per terahash at that point. So those are the way I would go. They do have obviously the option to get either the T21s, right, which are 190 terahash, I believe, or the S21 Pros, which are like 230 some terahash, but the more efficient. So I would go with the more efficient ones. Maybe pay a little bit more, but you'll probably get better returns on those going forward. How negatively would having impact miners' profitabilities? Well, it's already impacted them as far as profitability is concerned. The revenues are down. They're not down as much as we thought they're going to be, because in April with the halving event, we had the runes that, I mean, for a couple of days we had huge transaction fees added to it. So it actually helped out there. But going forward, I mean, we're seeing basically a 50% decrease in their revenues, right? If they're not growing their hash rate fast or fast enough, things like that, right? Basically, if their hash rate was at right now, let's just say the hash rate was at 10, they basically need to be in like 20 exahash to have the same kind of revenue that they were at that point. Or Bitcoin has to go up to like 120, 130,000 at that point. Okay, so that's kind of the way it works. What's your heaviest miner, and do you own MicroStrategy? I do not own MicroStrategy, and I'm not sure what you mean by heaviest miner. The one that I'm most in, that would be Cleanspark, based on the amount of shares that I own, and yeah, and the price, my average price I get at that point. Next would be Bitfarms, and then following would be IREN. Let's see here. What's your sell strategy for Cleanspark? My average is $16. I still think that Cleanspark can get to $70 this cycle. But that's Bitcoin getting to like 150,000, 180, maybe 200,000, something like that. If it goes beyond that, we're looking obviously possibly even more than that. But that's kind of where I'm looking at. So that'd be basically, would it be like a 4.5x from where it's at right now, which I think is very doable, roughly. Let's see here. How many miners are profitable and virtually debt-free? There were quite a few miners that were profitable in Q1, right? Q2 is going to be a different story at that point. It just depends how well they can grow out their hash rate to increase their hash rate, right? Also, where does Bitcoin go? So it's going to be tough. A lot of miners that had the HODL position also helped them out tremendously with the FASB rules. They could do it, and then there's just a lot of variables at play here. So we're halfway through the quarter right now, and right now it's going to be tight. I mean, I don't know if there's going to be any miners going to be profitable if Bitcoin stays where it's at right now. Hello, your take on DMG, can it 10x? I will talk about DMG in another video later on this month. I got to pull in all the data for them as far as April production numbers and their, I think they reported also their financial results, right? So I'll do a small miners because that's in my small miner category. I'll do that at the end, somewhere towards the end of the month here. I got to pull all the data for those 6 small miners in there, and I'll talk about it at that point. Let's see. What do you think about Cleanspark's Wyoming deal getting canceled due to matters of national security? Is that a big deal? That's not, to my understanding, that is not that facility. There was another facility in Wyoming that was supposedly being bought by the Chinese. Why would their deal get canceled if it's a U.S. company, Cleanspark, right? There's no reason for it. So I don't think it's that's the reason, right? But I could be wrong on that, but I don't believe that's the case. Let's see. Okay, last cycle everyone expected BTC to 100,000 plus, and most predictions were wrong. Would you hold through the next cycle if BTC doesn't reach your targets? This cycle is if 5x from 15K turns out to be the top, e.g. 73,000. I mean, yeah, if 73,000 is the top, well, it's definitely going to be a letdown for a lot of people because it's not much of a gain from the 69,000 top that we had prior to that. So I think a lot of people are expecting a lot more, and I think that will happen. But will I hold? Probably not. If we get to 73,000, that's all we get for the next couple months or something like that for the next 5-6 months. At a certain point, you just got to go, okay, maybe this is the top and get out of it. But with everything that's happening with the adoption of ETFs, pension funds buying into it, banks wanting to buy into it, other countries getting ETFs into it as well, we're going to be going up, right? How high we're going to go, we don't know. But I'm guessing it's going to be probably north of 100,000. Okay. Okay. I don't get why some miners are trading at just 2x annual revenue like BitDigital, Hive, and some are at 6x, 7x. As of now, all are profitable. The reason for it is growth, right? If you're not growing your hash rate, you're basically either dying or you're dying slowly. Obviously, some are trying to diversify a little bit into AI as well. We've seen the results from BitDigital as far as their AI. What that is, gross profit is around 60-70%, which is actually pretty good, right? But that's just steady revenue for them. Whereas Bitcoin and the Bitcoin miners, if you have those, you can definitely, I mean, there's bull cycles and there's bear cycles for them, right? So there's cycles where they make huge gross profits on those things, and then there's obviously cycles where they're down on gross profits. But in those huge bull cycles, that's where they make most of their money, and that's kind of what investors are looking for, I think. So if those companies, Hive doesn't have a huge growth plans going forward. Bit Digital, same thing, right? They're at roughly 3 exahash right now. They're supposed to get to maybe 6 exahash, but they haven't purchased anything yet. So I think that's the reason for it there, right? We saw yesterday IREN come out saying that they're going to get to 30 exahash by the end of this year. So they're upping their timeline. They're getting 20 exahash by Q3 and then possibly 40 exahash sometime in early 2025, right? And look at the stock today. It jumped even though they came out with an ATM. So I think investors are looking for growth, and growth is basically king here right now, at least of what I'm seeing. Let's see here. What were you investing into before miners prior to 2021? I actually invested in Hive from 2017, 2018. Dollar cost average down into it, and then I held through it through the 21 cycle. Right, everybody was saying Bitcoin's going to go to 100,000. Didn't happen. I held on to it, and I finally sold it last year in November. I just didn't see the growth there anymore. It's like, okay, I don't think it's going to be going anywhere near where it was before. I might as well cut my losses. I was still profitable, but I didn't get into it. And then I was also running a small Bitcoin mining farm from 2017 through 2022 as well. So this is kind of where my expertise comes in from running that small farm. Let's see here. Where can I buy shares in those mining companies, Bitfarms, and others as well? You can buy them through basically any brokerage, I think. I'm sure you can get on Schwab, E-Trade, Fidelity. What else is there? Webull, probably Robinhood as well, right? So you can probably get them anywhere. What price targets do you have for Bitfarms, IREN if both achieve end of year exahash and BTC price of 150,000? Okay, so we're looking at 2x on those. Then we're looking at possibly 3 to 5x, 3 to 6x on the miners here. Right, that's typically what we see. Bitcoin goes up 2x, you can basically multiply it by 3 and get like a 6x out of the miners potentially. Right, but they got to obviously execute, they got to grow, they have to perform well as well. Right, so uptime, efficiencies, all those things have to be taken into account as well. Sebastian made the mistake of selling IREN after hours last night. I give up. Done with the miners. Please tell viewers not to make the same mistake and let the dust settle. Yeah, I mean, you can't be emotional with the miners. You just don't know what they're going to do, right? Sometimes we thought the ATM coming out was going to drop the price. That didn't happen. It still might happen, but I think investors saw the growth going forward, and that's why I don't day trade them, right? They're just, to me, I don't have time to day trade them. Plus, they're volatile. Things can change on a dime with them. That's why I've been dollar cost averaging since 2022. So that's the way I've kind of looked at it, and I don't have to worry about it. And, you know, my bags have actually grown because of it, right? So it's time in the market, not timing the market, right? I suck at timing the market. That's why I don't do it. Yeah, I heard about this. So, hi, Switch, what's your opinion of the CME offering spot Bitcoin trading and its possible effect on miners? I don't know what the effect is going to be on the miners, but that's definitely more adoption, right, with the miners and Bitcoin and everything else. So that's a good thing, I would believe. But I have to look more into it. I don't know. I know CME futures is usually, CME group is usually like futures and things like that. But they're going to be doing spot Bitcoin trading. That might be kind of cool. Obviously, more exposure. Let's see here. I sold half my Wolf holdings to increase my IREN position. In my opinion, they have the potential to run like Cleanspark did. Why not transition from your Cleanspark position to IREN to catch the potential run? Like I said, my average cost is like $3.56. I'm way up right now, right? If it goes to $70, like I think it might be, I mean, that's basically going to be, what is it going to be? A 20x for me, right? Why would I change that out? So that doesn't make any sense for me, at least. If I was higher priced on it on average, maybe that would make more sense, but right now it just doesn't make any sense for me to do it. Let's see. Sebastian, 100,000 BTC by end of year. What's your thinking? I think it's possible. That or maybe might be a little bit higher than that, but we're still, what is it, roughly 6 months out from that, right? If the Fed lowers interest rates, that's going to be a boom for us. We got obviously the presidential election happening as well. I think things are going to be booming here possibly for the next 6 months, and we'll see where it goes. But I'm thinking that's possible. Let's see. Okay. If S&P and NASDAQ go down, how would that affect our miners? There is some correlation, obviously, with the S&P, I think, and the NASDAQ as well for like Bitcoin. So if those go down a little bit, they'll follow a suit, I believe, right? Unless Bitcoin continues to pump higher, then at that point, they will probably follow Bitcoin, right? Sometimes Bitcoin does decouple from those. There's at times that it does happen, and it's usually in the bull runs, and we might see that again. Let's see. Reinvesting in the stock market before Hive? If so, what stocks or sectors, if you don't mind me sharing? Yeah. I mean, gosh, I was much younger at that point, much stupider, I guess you could say. Not as wise as I am now, having learned many lessons. But I was investing like the penny stocks at one point. I was also investing in biopharmaceuticals, right? Thinking, they're pretty low price, but then you have to go through all the regulatory hurdles and everything else. And even though they may have a pretty good cancer drug or something like that, it just wasn't great. So I learned from that, and I've stuck to things that I want to get into, right? So Bitcoin mining, I got into that. I got interested in that. I ran a bunch of data on it. I've also noticed that things that I start using, like Apple computers, right? I started using those probably 15 years ago. I wish I would have bought that, right? Because I see value in those things. Tesla, same thing. I couldn't afford a Tesla, but I definitely loved the way the company was being run, what they were doing, what they were trying to do, right? Should have bought Tesla, didn't buy it. Didn't have the cash also, so that's another thing. Other things, Google, right? All these other things. Amazon, started using Amazon. I should have bought Amazon stock at that point. So there's just things that I've learned over the times, over the years, and that's kind of where I'm at right now. But the good thing with the miners is we get all this data constantly with them every month, and we can see which ones are doing great, which ones are not doing so great. And so far, that's been working out for me. And I'm hoping that obviously with Bitfarms and IREN being my two next bets here, that they're going to work out just as well as Cleanspark has done so far. Okay, because I'm seeing kind of the same thing with them as I did with Cleanspark at that point. Let's see. Why should one buy miners over altcoins at this stage? Data, right? We have a lot more data on the miners. You have a lot more transparency with the miners. Altcoins, you don't know what the heck you're getting there. I bought altcoins in the past too. Didn't do very well with those either. So I learned my lesson. The altcoins that I do have, I'm going to probably sell out of those, except probably keep Ethereum and Bitcoin. Those two I'm going to keep. Everything else I'm going to sell off. I'm done with those. Let's see. How safe is BTC technically? It's pretty safe as long as you didn't lose your keys or you don't keep your BTC on exchanges or things like that. It could possibly get hacked. So as long as you take them off the exchanges, if you're not trading them, you should be in pretty good shape. Make sure you have a backup of your keys and keep it in a secure place. If you have a hardware wallet, keep it in a fireproof safe or something like that. So you got to do some things to obviously keep it safe. Let's see here. Cleanspark, Bitfarms, IREN, which one outperforms from now on? Okay. So outperforms, you're looking at obviously like 2x, 3x, 4x gains. I think obviously from here, Cleanspark's already had a huge run, right? Could it still do a 10x from here? Depending where Bitcoin goes, right? Or if they report they're going to get to 50 exahash by the end of this year and then maybe 75 exahash next year or something like that. It all depends on that. So they still have the potential to do that if they time it right with the Bitcoin bull happening. IREN and Bitfarms currently are way undervalued, in my opinion, from where they really should be. So they potentially have more X upside. I guess you could say that way. Let's see. If oil prices go up, how will they affect the miners? I don't think it's going to affect the miners that much. Most of these miners either run on hydro, solar, nuclear, or wind farm. So nobody's really running on oil or natural gas or anything like that, which would possibly affect the prices on that. But I know it has some effect on, obviously, on electricity. But most of these guys have pretty good rates fixed in for a while. Let's see. Why is Cleanspark being shorted this much lately? They're way up. They're like the best performer here in the 52 weeks. So people are definitely going to be trying to knock that one down a little bit to maybe get in at a better price, right? And they obviously have pretty good growth plans going forward. But there's a question is, can they buy the infrastructure that's needed and build out in time or fast enough in time to get to 32 exahash by the end of the year? So that might be the reason why it's also being shorted. Have you reviewed Hive recently? I like their HODL amount, and I think they can be a good narrative for why people would buy miners with high amounts of BTC. Yeah, their HODL has been increasing. Like I said, I owned Hive for a while there, for a couple of years, because they were efficient. They were doing all the right things, but they're kind of not looking to be like the top miner, right? Which I think that's kind of where the money going forward is flowing into. They're very efficient. They run great operations. They have good cost structures. They do all the right things, but they're not growing to the hash rate that we're seeing the top 5 miners getting to. So that's why I'm not into them. Let's see here. Okay, how safe is BTC, not my BTC? BTC is safe, right? We got nodes, you got miners, you got everything else. That's obviously protecting Bitcoin there. The only concern there would be obviously a 51% attack, which we don't see that happening anytime soon, at least not. Plus, why would you do it, right? It would take, my gosh, it would take billions of dollars to even wage a 51% attack on BTC. Really no point in it. You're better off just buying BTC and holding it and, having it go up in the bull runs. So I don't see a reason for why it would be attacked. The only thing is obviously nation states blocking it or countries blocking it or something like that. That's the only really concern there. Let's see. Could IREN buy shares back if they don't use all of the ATM? They won't buy back shares, and none of the companies here will buy back shares, I don't think. It doesn't make any sense for them to do it. You got to keep up with the other miners. You got to grow your hash rate, so they're continuing going to be using that capital to grow that way. The only way that's going to happen is if over time Bitcoin gets to a point where it's profitable for them based on the BTC rewards, and if the network transaction fees are high enough to where they can sustain it and have a pretty still good profitable margin, right? So probably around 35, 40%, if not 50% profit margins, and things kind of steady out that way. At that point, maybe they can possibly do that at that point. Same thing with dividends. I don't see any company here doing dividends anytime soon. Let's see here. BTC has gone up 4x since December 2022, but WGMI has gone up much less than that since that time. Yes, so have the other miners as well. So if you look at Bitcoin, where Bitcoin is only being, I believe, outperformed by TeraWolf right now and Cleanspark. All right, those are the only two that have outperformed Bitcoin here in the last 52 weeks. All the other miners have done worse, right? And WGMI is a basket of all these miners. So when those underperform, obviously they're going to underperform Bitcoin as well. Let's see here. Why do Mara Bulls investors get so jealous about Cleanspark success? Because they're worried that somebody else is going to take, obviously, the throne away from Mara, right? Mara is in a position where, I shouldn't say in a position, but Mara has, or how can I put this? Mara, gosh, I'm drawing a blank here. Mara has the position, first place position to lose, right? If they don't screw things up and they get to 50 exahash, they fix their operational issues and things like that, they're still going to be the number one miner here, right? But obviously, if they fumble any of those things, then yes, Cleanspark or somebody like IREN could potentially over time overtake them as being like the number one Bitcoin miner as far as size is concerned and all the operations is concerned. But obviously, we've seen recently with Cleanspark getting from nowhere to basically nipping at the heels of Mara, right? That's not sitting well with obviously the Mara pigs and things like that. But I think Mara can do very well going forward as well. Okay. Can you briefly explain how CORZ or when they can get out of bankruptcy and when they can start hodling? They're already out of bankruptcy, right? I don't know exactly what the details are for after emergence out of a bankruptcy for them and when can they hodl. I think right now they're just trying to grow as much as they can. They need to replace some of their older fleet as well, right? So that's going to cost money. And they're trying to get the stock price up to the warrants, where the warrants would then exercise at $6 something and $8 something, which would then help them pay off the debt, and they would also get some cash for that as well at that time. So I think that's why they're mostly doing it. All right. Next question. I'm losing my voice. Are the cycles going to be the same in the months and years to come? We don't know that. This cycle is already different with the Bitcoin spot ETFs, right? We saw a new all-time high before the event, which never happened before. And some are saying that obviously this cycle could be where it's a more extended, slower increase in BTC price for, instead of going up, 12 to 18 months, having a huge parabolic rise, it could be going up for a couple of years. We don't know. We obviously have much bigger players in the space now than we have ever had before. We got institutions with, some of them have trillions of dollars in assets that they can deploy into this, or assets under management. So we'll have to keep an eye on it. I don't know what's going to happen. The cycle is different, though. I would definitely love to get another bear market out of this eventually, right? Have a nice bull run into the next 12 months, 18 months, and then have another bear market, repeat the process, basically rinse and repeat. Oh, I would love that. Let's see here. Let's see, already covered that. Let's see. Any advice in convincing my wife that the miners will moon so she's not so sick of hearing me talk about it? Patience, I guess, is the only thing you could say, and then maybe show her how much Marathon went up last cycle, right? Marathon went up 7,000%. If you guys are patient, you guys are just dollar cost averaging into it, I think you'll do very well going forward. It's just when you get into these situations where you try to trade it, that's where it gets tough, right? And that's why I like to be in the market longer than trying to time the market. And I try to be greedy when others are fearful and be fearful when others are greedy. That's kind of the way I've tried to do it this time around. Let's see. Can Ethereum outperform BTC? Don't know. I know obviously a lot of people are hoping for the spot ETF to be approved potentially for Ethereum. I don't know if that's going to happen. That's a dicey one there. I'm not sure that's going to happen though. A lot of people are saying obviously are calling it a security, which obviously falls into other categories. But we'll see. Let's see, covered that one already. Okay. Currently holding CORZ warrants. Do you think it's better just to buy shares? Oh gosh, I don't know. That's a good question. I've never bought warrants before. I don't know how those are obviously going to work. I think if they get to the set prices, then they get exercised, and I think you get your money at that point. Obviously, it helps the company as well. So I'm not sure. You may have to ask somebody else on that one. Okay. Spreadsheets are blurry for me. Is that just me or something that that can be done? So I believe I'm putting this out in 4K video format. The only thing that might happen is if you're watching it on maybe a slower internet connection. That's why it might be blurry a little bit for you. If you can, there might be like a little cog that you can click on down towards the bottom and increase the resolution at that point. That might help out. Let's see. When are you doing the spaces with the BTC mining guy? We're doing that not this weekend. He's traveling this week, so we're not gonna be able to do it this week. But we are doing it next weekend, and we are gonna be having Dan Roberts from IREN on, I believe, at that point as well. I believe he said that he's gonna join, so that would be great, and we'll see if we can get some others on there. I'd love to get Fred on there from Marathon just to talk to him, pick his brain a little bit on things, but we'll see who else we can get on there. Question, since Wolf uses nuclear generation for power, their energy costs should be super duper low. All profits in mining Bitcoin, correct? Yeah, I mean, they do have really low power along with Cypher. Cypher's like 2.5, 2.7 cents. I think Wolf is at like 2.7 cents as well. And then they're 4 something at the other site, which obviously brings them a blended cost of like 3 cents something, which is super low. Yeah, so Wolf has that in their favor. The only thing is they got to pay off the debt, grow their hash rate into this year. I think that's the only thing that's holding stock back right now. Let's see. If only 2 miners outperform BTC, how can we be confident it's going to be different moving forward? Isn't that too risky? No, because we were still in this, we're obviously past the bear market in 2022, right? 2023 was a better year for us. And in that point, a lot of miners did perform a lot better. But recently here, as we got closer to the halving event, the miners were pulling back, right? So that's kind of where we're seeing that decrease in miners outperforming Bitcoin. Going forward, Bitcoin goes up 2x, the miners should do at least 4 to 6x on top of that. So that's where you're going to see the gains here. Now, not all miners are going to be equal, right? Not everybody's going to do the same thing where they're going to do 4 to 6x, 5x, 10x, whatever it might be. The ones that are obviously growing, I believe, at least this is my thought, the miners that are growing nicely into the bull run in 2024 and early 2025 will possibly outperform the ones that are not growing that much here this year. Let's see. Do you think it would be plausible or possible for Mara or Cleanspark could merge or any other larger miners? I don't see anybody merging here. Everybody's kind of set in their ways a little bit. Everybody wants to take as much profits as they can. They obviously like the stock-based compensation, right? Especially if the stock goes up, they make a heck of a lot more. So I don't think anybody wants to give up ownership or control of their companies. I don't see that happening anytime soon. Some of the smaller miners, they might have to, because you might see that they just need to do that in order to survive, right? Depending where Bitcoin goes, their operations and things like that. So that's kind of where I would maybe see it at that point. how does the HPC business work? If it takes years to pay back for the full investment, would the miners not make any money for years with the HPC business until the entire data center NVIDIA GPU investment? Yeah, I mean, it's a much bigger investment in that, right? So that's kind of where everybody's kind of trying to figure this stuff out. A lot of these guys are doing like small little tests here just to see how things play out. What's the revenue going to be like? What's the income's going to be on it? And then what's the profit margins? How fast can they get an ROI on it? Right now, you're looking at the H100s. If you buy those, you get a long-term contract. You're looking at 2 years to basically ROI on those things. Whereas some of the ASIC miners, you can possibly ROI in like 12 to 14 months, right? Much faster ROI. Also, the data centers they have to build out cost a heck of a lot more. So, I mean, you're looking at like maybe 4 years at that point to ROI on the investment in AI and HPC, right? So it's definitely a balancing act that they got to figure out here. Is the demand really there? If the demand is there, then okay, can you get a nice customer that can help you maybe fund some of that infrastructure build out and purchases on the miners as well, or on the HPC side of things? It's tricky. See, those institutions do not keep BTC on their balance sheet, right? They only offer it. Not sure what you mean by they only offer it. Institutions, when you're talking about institutions like, let's see, pensions funds they're buying the spot Bitcoin ETFs, right? So the spot Bitcoin ETFs have to buy Bitcoin, and they do keep it on their balance sheet, or they have a custody with somebody else, a third party. And then when people sell out of it, they have to sell out of their Bitcoin positions as well. It's a spot Bitcoin ETF. That's kind of how it works. Charlie Wang, thank you. Yes, thumbs up, everyone, if you guys enjoy it. Definitely would appreciate it. Let's see here. Are more than 90% of BTC in 1% of hands? Good question. I'm not sure. We have to look at some data from Glassnode. Glassnode would probably have that data. Okay, following up on HPC question, how should the HPC business be valued if the investment takes years to be fully paid back? That's a good question. That's one of the things I'm struggling with, is how to figure that out. Right, with the AC miners, we know that's usually about, if you buy them at the right time, they're usually about 12 to 14 months, potentially even faster, depending on when you buy them and when you get them installed and where Bitcoin price goes up, right? So you could even get a ROI on those in like 8 months, right? Or faster even, depending on how fast Bitcoin rips up to an all-time high. With the HI or HPC stuff and AI stuff, I don't know. If you're looking at much longer returns on those, it's more steady business, right? So there's less fluctuations in it. So we'll have to figure some things out. I'll have to look into some things potentially as well. I'm just not sure right now. Let's see. Part of the reason Mara did so well last cycle was because there was under investment in miners. Do you have any gauge on private investment in BTC mining this cycle? Global hash rate growth hurt our thesis. I don't think they did so well because it was under investment in the miners. I think they did really well because they stated they were going to get to 21 exahash right in 2022, right, which didn't happen until sometime in 2023. So they were a year behind. But based on the growth that they were projecting for them and the hash rate, that's what rocketed the stock up to, from the bottom of where they were to the top, 7,000%. As far as how much investment is in BTC from private investment, I mean, there's probably a pretty sizable amount. I mean, if you just take a look at Swan here, Swan Bitcoin, they came out of stealth mode last year. 9 months into it, they're already at 7.3, 7.4 exahash, something like that. That's quite a bit of cash to put into it. So there is a lot of private investment into the side of things as well. But it's hard to figure that out because it's private. You're really not getting any information out into the public unless they actually do like seed raises and things like that, whether it's Series A, B, C, whatever it might be. Let's see. Okay. I have now 40,000 Bitfarms at I guess it would be 1.8 euros, 15,000 from Mara at 10 euros, 2,000 for Cleanspark at 14 euros, 2,000 Riot at 9 euros. I want to buy for another 20,000. In which would you invest now? More Bitfarms? Let me see here. What do you have? You got Bitfarms, Cleanspark. Let me see that question there. You got Bitfarms, Mara, Cleanspark, Riot. I'll look in Bitfarms and IREN potentially. Not right. IREN and Bitfarms. I'll look at those. Right, they're definitely more undervalued than we would see with like Riot or Marathon or Cleanspark. Those might do a little bit better going forward. Not sure, right? But that's kind of my guess here. My thesis is that they will do a little bit better, especially if they can grow their hash rate. But those are the ones that we kind of look at as far as having pretty good growth here in the hash rate going forward into this year. Let's see. Okay, can you explain the difference between the CORZ stock options? Why CORZ? Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of them. A good video on that would probably be the one from Bryce McNally and Anthony when they had Adam Sullivan on their channel. This was probably going back about a month now. Search for their channel for Adam Sullivan or CORZ, and you should find it in there. But that's actually really good where he goes into details on how those work and how those get triggered. So watch that. I can't explain it as well as he did. Regards from Germany, you're doing a great job. Thank you. I appreciate it. Let's see here. Okay. Which miners insiders are buying their own company's shares the most? Can you make a video about that? I think the only ones that were buying here recently was CORZ, because that one was obviously way undervalued, and that's about it, I think. But I would have to double check on that. I don't think there's a lot of companies that were buying theirs. I think, what was it, maybe Wolf also potentially? But I would have to look into it. Okay. If BTC price remains in this ballpark, which miners will be able to survive, if any? Yeah, they'll be able to survive. You got obviously miners that are still growing. So you got Marathon, Riot, Cleanspark, Bitfarms, IREN growing tremendously in this year, right? They're going to be doing just fine if they can just grow their hash rate. So they should be okay. The miners that are not growing as much will have a much harder time because their share of the network hash rate is going to be decreasing. They're going to be generating less, right? So Bitcoin just stays flat. Those that are not growing are going to be generating less. Less revenue means obviously going to be even more trouble at that point. Let's see. What do you think about the Infinity Hash project in Russia? Don't know anything about it. I don't follow those things. When would you consider entering CORZ? CORZ is also way undervalued right now. That's a tough one for me. My dad has a lot of CORZ shares. He bought it before the bankruptcy, but he held on to it and dollar cost averaged into it some more. I don't know. When I'm maybe fully loaded on IREN, at that point, maybe then I can think about getting into CORZ. But at that point, I'm guessing we're going to be probably in the max bull run mode. So it's going to be kind of tough at that point. But I do think that they are way undervalued from where they really should be. But obviously, the concern with investors is the warrants and just getting out of bankruptcy, right? A lot of people have a sour taste after bankruptcies. Let's see. How does IREN's HODL compare to Bitfarms? What HODL? IREN does not have a HODL. So there's nothing to compare there. Bitfarm has a bigger HODL, obviously, than IREN does. Let's see. Personally, I would add CORZ. Adam Sullivan is the best. Yeah, I mean, Adam has done a fantastic job getting the company turned around after bankruptcy. So, and he was brought in because they were in bankruptcy. So he was brought in to turn the ship around. And he's done a fantastic job there. Let's see. How big of an issue is CORZ debt? It's not that big of a deal. If the warrants exercise, one of them, I think it's tranche A, or I can't remember. But if one of them gets exercised, they can actually pay off like 300 some odd million of the debt there, and they also get like 300 million in cash, I think, at that point, something like that, to help them grow forward. But again, watch the video from McNally Money and Anthony at that point. That explains a lot better than I can. Okay, which miners do you personally think will achieve the biggest gain at the current valuations? Again, I think based on where they are, the ones that are the most undervalued, like Bitfarms, IREN, those guys might do the best here, the ones that we're tracking out of the big miners. You might have some smaller miners, right, that pump pretty hard too, but we don't even know if some of those smaller miners will survive. So I'd rather be in these guys here where I'm pretty sure they're going to survive, and they're growing into this year as well. Yeah, so Brad Hopkins states the warrants will clear all or most of their debt. Okay. James, you're very welcome. Appreciate that. Okay. Once BTC starts pumping up to 100,000, how much of a lag do you feel the miners will have to pump? I feel miners react faster on downside versus upside. Definite Wall Street manipulation by short. Sometimes the miners actually will front run Bitcoin, and we've seen that a couple times, especially in bull runs. Last cycle, the majority of the miners front run Bitcoin to the upsides, to all-time highs. The only one that was not in that camp was Marathon. Marathon in 2021, peaked in, what was it, April? I think we had the first like 67,000 high, and then going into later on this year, Bitcoin went up to 69,000, and Marathon at that time also reached a new all-time high at that point. That was the only one that did it. Everybody else was pretty much done for with the first top. Let's see. What do you think of El Salvador mining? Yeah, so the country's mining through they're using steam from the volcano, right? How do you call that power? Volcano power, I guess. I don't know. Thermal power, geothermal power. I guess that would be it. But they're mining as a test project. There is a possibility to do it, right? So I think that's great, and they're also doing it for their country, which I think is okay. They're not doing it at a large scale. They're not doing it at 100 exahash, 50 exahash, whatever it might be. They're doing it at a small scale, testing it and adding it to their country. I'm okay with it. And then let me see here. Any thought on MicroStrategy? It's too expensive right now to buy it. Let me see where it's at right now, MicroStrategy, really quick. I mean, sometimes MicroStrategy, if you look at it, it front runs Bitcoin and then it pulls back. Usually MicroStrategy should be like a 2x to like a 2.5x on top of what Bitcoin is doing. Right now, if I look at it, yeah, MicroStrategy is at 1,500 almost, 1,439. And if we go, oh, it looks like my camera just died on me. Sorry, guys. But hopefully the stream is still going. But if you look at it compared to Bitcoin on that side of things, that's kind of where I would look at it. I think right now it's a little bit overpriced a little bit. I think it needs to come down a little bit to be a little bit more fairly valued to where it is. And that would be probably it here. Let me see if I got any other questions. We'll call it a day here. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. We're done for. My camera died. My battery died in my camera. We've been going for a while. We've been going for about an hour here. So great questions, guys. Enjoy doing these. Okay, we got one last question here. We'll take it from Vampire Hunter. Any options on what the overall HPC landscape looks like currently, even including those outside of the miners? You got quite a few miners in that space. You got Hive doing it. You got Hut 8 doing it. You got IREN getting into it as well. Cypher's dabbling in it. Wolf, I think, is going to be dabbling into it as well. CORZ is obviously dabbling into it quite nicely. BitDigital. So the landscape is growing in the space here. And I think a lot of the miners are still kind of dabbling with it a little bit, trying to get their feel for it. They're not quite certain on it yet, right? I think the demand might be there, but are the customers getting into those types of things? And, it depends on the demands of the customers. If the customers demand to have, like a tier 3, tier 4 data center, a lot of these guys can't do that. So they're looking for customers that really don't care if you do have to shut down for a little bit because of curtailment, whatever that might be. They're going to pay a little bit less for that or get paid less for that service. But right, that's what they can kind of offer. Otherwise, you're building out a tier 3 data center. You're paying, millions per megawatts at that point. Okay. So that is it. I apologize for my camera shutting down. I don't know what's going on. I may have to buy a new battery. I've been doing this for a couple of years now on the same battery. So it might be time to change out the battery here. So we're just going to go to, let me see, what do we want to do here? We'll go to technical difficulties. We'll leave you guys with that. So I'll just say thank you so much for coming out to watch this. Thank you for all the questions. Greatly appreciate it, you guys. Tomorrow, we won't do a video tomorrow because tomorrow's Friday. You guys are usually busy on Fridays. You guys are out with your dates, your kids, whatever it might be. And I want to do that too. So we're going to take tomorrow off. We'll come back either on Saturday or Sunday. We'll do a video. We'll look at obviously how the miners performed over this past week. And if there was anything that happened, obviously tomorrow as well. So I wish you guys a great Friday. Wish you guys a wonderful weekend. And we'll get back in the swings on the weekend. Okay. So again, thank you so much. And I'll try to fix my camera for next time. Until then, I'll see you guys. Bye.